Hi, I'm Bill Sluss, Program Manager for School Data Sync, and in this video, I'll show you how to deploy School Data Sync using the OneRoster API sync method. In order to deploy SDS successfully, you must have an Office 365 for Education tenant, a global admin account, and the School Data Sync Plan 1 service enabled within your license. If you meet these prerequisites, you're ready to deploy SDS. Now let's walk through it. To begin deploying SDS, open a private modern browser and navigate to sds.microsoft.com. Once the page renders, click the sign-in link in the upper right-hand corner. When prompted, enter your global administrator credentials. If this is your first time logging into SDS, you'll be greeted with a settings page, which will allow you to enable or disable School Data Sync. Ensure you toggle the switch to the on position to enable School Data Sync if you're greeted with this page. Once you've landed on the SDS Sync dashboard homepage, click the Add Profile button to begin the SDS Setup Wizard. To begin the SDS setup, you first need to specify a name for your sync profile. A sync profile is just a collection of settings and configurations that define how and what SDS will synchronize to your Office 365 tenant. Once you've named your sync profile, pick the connection method SDS will use to sync your school's data. If syncing using an API sync method, choose the Connect via an API option shown. Next, choose the API method you want to use. If you're syncing using the OneRoster API sync method, choose OneRoster API. Once you've made your selections, click Start. On the Sync Options page, decide whether you'll be creating new users or syncing existing users. If new users, SDS will create user accounts for each student and teacher within your OneRoster-enabled SIS. If syncing existing users, SDS will add extension attributes on top of the already existing user objects within your Office 365 tenant for each of the students and teachers within your OneRoster-enabled SIS. For this video, we'll be selecting the existing users option since my users are already existing in my Office 365 tenant. Once you've selected the appropriate option, it's time to connect your student information system. Enter the web access URL, client ID, and client secret for your SIS. If you're unfamiliar with how or where to pull these, contact your SIS provider for assistance. Once you've entered the connection details, click the blue Test Connection button. Once your connection has been established, select which schools you want to synchronize by selecting them from the drop-down menu. In the Select Schools and Section Properties menu, select the attributes you plan to synchronize. This selection should mirror the attributes contained within your SIS. Next, you have the option to allow SDS to replace invalid special characters inline during the sync process. As special characters are encountered, SDS will automatically replace them with an underscore. The next option allows you to control the section display name for each group you create. SDS will always write the display name during the first time sync. This option, however, decides if SDS will overwrite the display name back to the source directory value on each subsequent sync, or if you want to allow teachers to update and manage the section display name after first time sync. Next, you have the option to delay the processing of student enrollments. This is helpful when you don't want to expose your school's student rosters in advance of the school start date. Be sure to set a date early enough for Sync to complete processing, though. Large districts can take several days to fully process student enrollments for the first time Sync. Small districts may complete within a few hours. Finally, you can decide if you would like to license all students and teachers for Intune for Education. Be sure you have enough licenses available in your tenant before checking this option. Once you've made all your selections on the page, click Next. On the Teacher Options page, select your identity matching options. This is where you'll tell SDS how to match teachers from your OneRoster SIS to users in your Office 365 tenant. In the Primary Key Source Directory option, select the attribute you want to use for identity matching. If you need to add a domain to your source attribute, select the appropriate domain from the drop-down menu. Finally, select the target attribute which you are matching to. Your source attribute plus the domain selected should equal this value. If the identities match, the identity will sync. If they don't match, you'll see an error for the failed match after your sync completes. See the identity matching link at the end of this video for more detail on how to configure the appropriate settings here. Next, select the teacher properties you plan to sync. You should mirror the attributes that are included in your OneRoster SIS within this menu. Once you've made your selections on the page, click Next. On the Student Options page, again, select your identity matching options. This is where you'll tell SDS how to match students from your OneRoster SIS to users in Office 365. In the Primary Key Source Directory option, select the attribute you want to use for matching. If you need to add a domain to your source attribute, select the appropriate domain from the drop-down menu. Finally, select the target attribute which you are matching to. Your source attribute plus the domain attribute should equal this value. If these values match, the identity will sync. If they don't match, you'll see an error for a failed match after your sync completes. See the identity matching link at the end of this video for more detail on how to configure the appropriate settings here. Next, select the appropriate student properties you plan to sync. You should mirror the attributes that are included in your OneRoster SIS within this menu. Once you've made your selection, click Next. On the Summary page, review the sync profile settings and ensure no additional changes are needed. Once you've confirmed the settings look good, click the blue Create Profile link at the bottom of the page. Once submitted, wait for the profile to create. This may take a minute or two. Continue to refresh the page until you see the sync profile populate with the blue icons and show an actual sync status. Once the profile is created, SDS will run through a pre-sync validation check. If errors are encountered, sync will stop and give the admin a chance to remediate the errors before starting the real sync. If you want to ignore the errors, you can also proceed without remediating. Just click the blue Resume Sync option on the profile to start the real sync. If no errors are encountered during the pre-sync validation check, the real sync will start automatically. Once sync is started, continue to check back on your sync status and remediate any errors as needed. And that's how you deploy school data sync using the OneRoster API. Thank you. And here are some helpful links if deploying SDS using the OneRoster API sync method.